This video is going to present a very brief overview of a thing known as loss aversion. So, loss aversion is the idea that losses loom larger than gains. So what I mean by that is if you were to lose something, whether that may be a mug or whether that may be £10, the idea is that that would actually have a greater impact upon you than actually gaining that same thing. So the term loss aversion was coined by Kahneman and Tversky in their paper in 1979. Now, it wasn't necessarily a completely novel idea. There were some observations along these lines before, but Kahneman and Tversky came up with the term loss aversion. So let's have a look at a couple of examples of loss aversion. So one of them is symmetrical bets. So in symmetrical bets, the idea is that you might have a risky choice and a certain choice. So in a risky choice, you might be given a 50% chance of winning £10 and 50% chance of losing £10. And that's exactly what is meant by a symmetrical bet. If we think about what the expected value of this would be, it would straightforwardly be 0. If you were to play this game many times, the expected amount of money that you would win would be 0. Now, so if you were essentially offered the chance to take this gamble or to not take the gamble, which is essentially saying you will have a 100% chance of winning 0, which again the expected value of 0, according to expected value theory, you should basically be ambivalent towards these two things because they both have an expected value of 0. What we find though is that in general people display a preference to avoid this gamble, this kind of symmetric gamble. Another example is taken, another example is the endowment effect. So this is often demonstrated with these willingness to pay and willingness to accept kind of studies. So simple one with mugs are often used for this. So the idea is, well, you don't have a mug, how much are you willing to pay in order to buy a mug? And then, well, what about other people might be asked, for example, well, you do have a mug, how much are you willing to accept to sell the mug? And in general, what happens is that people are willing to pay less than they are willing to accept in order to sell. So, for example, if you are willing to pay £3 for a mug, then they might actually only be willing to accept £4 in order to sell the mug. So I guess the idea here is that once you have the mug, you are endowed with ownership of the mug. And so even though you departed with maybe £3 to buy the mug, the idea of losing that would weigh more than the gain. So some people believe that this is incompatible with the idea that the positive utility of gaining a mug is equal to the negative utility of losing a mug. So that's just another way of saying that the loss of something is felt more keenly than the gain of it. So there are a couple of other examples which you could go through that demonstrate loss aversion, but I thought that I would end this very brief introductory video with just a reflection on some recent controversy. So loss aversion is one of the most widely known ideas in behavioral economics, certainly most widely known by the public, for example. And so many people have interpreted loss aversion to be really key, really fundamental. But some recent work is casting doubt on how fundamental loss aversion really is. I'm not going to go into this here, but these 3 papers go into that in much more detail if you are interested. They don't necessarily argue that loss aversion doesn't exist, for example, but what they might be arguing instead is that loss aversion is not necessarily fundamental, in that, sure, we can demonstrate loss aversion at times, but other times in different situations, maybe we don't exhibit it.